Don't flinch when you hear the 6 most dreaded words in radio sales.
We tried radio. It didn't work.
Why? It should have worked. The client and the station were a good fit. They bought enough frequency, but the copy was ineffective. I'm Holland Cooke. We've all chosen our career paths, and believe it or not, I listen to radio for a living, and I write for radio, and I write a lot of commercials and station promos. And if you remember one thing from this video, it's this: every single word matters. See how carefully I'm choosing my words? Too often copy fails, either because the station has a creative department or it doesn't have one. If you have a writer, he or she can get overwhelmed because the conveyor belt is moving too fast, especially if you're serving pizza during the annual telemarketing blitz. Year after year, it's a festive occasion. No outside appointments that day. Reps come to work in jeans and write long-term business at today-only rates. All at once, the system strains to bang out commercial copy that could air as long as 52 weeks. When my client stations blitz, I offered a temp camping out in the conference room, writing spots. Another reason commercial copy suffers, whether the station has or doesn't have a writer, is when the station is smart enough to exploit the most powerful tool in local direct retail prospecting: spec spots. With all the cutbacks lately, many stations have no in-house copywriter. Reps write their own spots, even in big markets. That seems like a disadvantage because reps' time is best invested on the street, prospecting and closing. So too often, they close new business, then bang out a script, then go close more new business to keep up with churn, because often the copy they bang out is ineffective. See the problem? Better, more effective commercial copy would help close new business and mitigate churn. And this may surprise you, but I think reps are uniquely qualified to write effective commercial copy for 2 reasons. Reason number 1, nothing gets lost in translation from the needs analysis dialogue the rep has while prospecting. The rep was there, interacting with the prospect. The creative person was back at the station trying to keep up with the conveyor belt. I go on lots of sales calls when I visit client stations, and I continue to observe that the killer top biller reps who get the order all begin that second call saying 6 words. Based on what you told me, which they say as they hit play on the spec spot, playing back what the prospect said on the first call: needs analysis. And the really smart reps bring 2 spec spots, 2 different approaches. So they're asking this one or that one, rather than yes or no. Reason number 2 I think sellers can be great copywriters is because they're sellers. And that's the basis of a technique we're implementing at the stations I work with. Get the reps to think about talking to the listener through the copy they write the same way they talk to the client. Even if your reps operate intuitively and don't think of the process in these particular terms, they close business by following what a real smart guy I worked with decades ago called the 5 steps of selling anything to anybody. And if you sell, or if you used to, you'll recognize that these steps in this order are how you got the order: pre-approach, approach, pitch, negotiate, close. In sales meetings, we role play how a couple new business accounts were recently prospected, so everyone can relate to how each of these steps worked and why they work in this order. And that's the big idea. Structure commercial copy the same way. Address the listener, your customer's customer, in the same way you sold your customer, the advertiser. Try it. Think back to your pre-approach, how you got to know a direct retail account you've prospected. Maybe you yourself shop at that store or use that service, and you wonder why more people don't. Or maybe you were assigned the account and you went to school on the prospect and its competitors. Maybe you gathered some information on the product or category and its customers.
There's lots of that on the Radio Advertising Bureau website, rab.com. Also there, spec spots from member stations elsewhere, actual commercials that you can assure your prospect moved the needle for a business just like yours in another city. Armed with all of that, you approached. But you didn't walk in pitching. Instead, you asked questions. I've been on calls with reps who seem so genuinely interested in the prospect's success that they got the order right then and there. And maybe you've gotten some orders on that first call. But more often, this initial encounter ends with an offer. Let me take what you've told me back to the radio station, and at our expense and at no obligation to you, I'll work up some copy and bring it back so you can tell me if we're telling your story right. In many cases, your client's own voice is part of the spec spot you bring back. Who could tell the story better? Often, in spots I help client stations create, we use sound bites that the rep recorded on her iPhone while interviewing the prospect on that first call. I'm recording this on my iPhone. Then it's that second call when most business is closed. Maybe you nailed it with the spec spot. Instead of describing how the station can tell the prospect's story, you demonstrate it with the spot. Heck, using the prospect's own voice might do the trick. If the spot needs tweaking, we'll redo it until you tell us we got it right, and you explain reach and frequency and all the other aspects of the schedule you've mapped out. You present options, various packages that fit various budgets. So you're asking this or that, rather than yes or no. And you got the order, because your copy approached the listener the same way. Before it aired, you understood how purchasing what's being advertised would advantage the consumer. Your copy began with those magic words, you or your. Ideally, both of them, in a question. You start in the listener's world and walk them toward the advertiser's solution. The spot explains how the shopper is better off patronizing the advertiser than not. And you end with a call to action.